Welcome to Read Between the Wines, where two bibliophiles discuss our love of the written word from cover to cover and cork to glass. Pour yourself a beverage and join us for this week's episode. Cheers!
Welcome back!
Celebrate! We're finally, you know why you're celebrating? Because we're finally talking about the thing that you wanted to talk about like a year ago.
It's been so long and I'm so excited that it's finally here. Allow me to introduce all of you to Chuck Palahniuk. This is my husband's favorite author. We have 20-ish of his books.
I didn't even know that there were that many.
Oh, and there's
So
more.
many.
We don't even have them. We don't even have them all. Very different writer from anything you've ever experienced. If you know Fight Club, you know Chuck Palahniuk. He is the author of Fight Club. But I gave Meg an assignment, an intro, if you would.
Yes.
I tried to get her to read Invisible Monsters first. I felt like this is a very good entry-level Chuck Palahniuk book. However, she dawdled around
and read other things. It's
she
not like I
fucked
wasn't
around and
reading.
found out.
Oh,
I
she did.
had her. I just kicked her off the deep end and made her read a short story from Haunted called Guts. And I was like, "Listen, I'm just kicking you in head first. Like this is just how it's going to happen." But you can see her reaction. She did.
It was our Halloween episode.
It was because we are haunted.
Oh yeah, I'm
so you
still
can
haunted
check
by
out that. But she finally came back to read Invisible Monsters, and
On my
now
own.
we can talk about it. Yes,
I was not forced. I was not like, it was one
you
of
were
those, I was
kind
like,
of
you know
forced.
what? It is time. I mean, I
There was arm twisting.
I was strongly encouraged, which I
Yes.
heeded said encouragement. I was like, you know what? Yes, I will go ahead and read it. Like, look at the cover, this cover, like the cover that I have on my other piece. Which one? Yeah, right. And there's even another cover that was like in my book tracker that's completely different.
Do you see it?
Right?
Do you see
I
the old
do.
lady?
I do see the old lady.
Do
So,
you
but
have
like,
this one?
no. It's
Okay.
not that one either. It's something
We'll
else. It's got
talk
like
about
different,
that.
right? There's so many different things.
Yes.
But like you've got the lady, you've got the colors, and I was like, all right, cool. Like, let's get into this. Did I read the back of it before I started? Absolutely not, because I trust you. Did I look
Do you
into it
trust me
at
still?
all? I don't know. We will talk.
That's the question.
I did. So I didn't read the back, right? I knew that I had read Haunted. I knew that was a ride. And I was like, oh, this one is not haunted. Like, this one should be fine. Like, we will be good. I'm not worried about it. Like, it'll be cool. I'm pretty sure, like, there's almost like a disclaimer at the beginning of the book that tells you exactly what the book is going to be like. And you're like, oh, okay. And then it says, don't expect this to be the kind of story that goes and then, and then, and then. Right? It doesn't go like, oh, this happens and then this happens and then this happens and then this happens. And like, it's not that kind of book. And I was like, okay, well, that's good. And then it just keeps jumping.
Yes.
So.
And there are reasons for that. We can get into that.
There are.
I want to start with all the words you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I know that your star rating was a 4 for this book.
It was.
And there was no review. So I am hearing this all like, I was like, don't tell me.
Right, we haven't talked
about it. We have to click record before you can talk about it because I want to know what you thought as you read it.
I was shook from like the beginning, right? So I'm reading it, and I think I had mentioned this in the last episode that we talked about, where like sometimes I read things and like when I talk about them with like a mad face. Like I do my little eyebrows where I'm like, I don't.
Mad eyebrows?
Right. They're not like, I'm not angry, but I'm definitely like processing as I'm talking. Right. It was one of those books where I feel like I was processing while I was talking. And so I'm reading it and I would stop and I would look at Mike and I'd be like, okay, like, I know you're not planning to read this. So I'm just going to tell you. It was one of those, right? Like, you're not going to read this. So I'm just going to say it to you and tell me if I sound crazy when I'm saying it to you. Cause I feel crazy when I'm reading it. Like, I just don't, he's like, okay. And so he's following along, but I'm also finding as I'm talking about it, it's not making any more sense. It's not that it doesn't make sense, but it also, like, doesn't make more sense than I wanted it to. Like, it
It's
all
kind of wild
follows.
until
It's
the very end.
insane.
Until the
And,
very end. And then you're
well,
like,
you start at one
whoa.
part and then you keep going. But I
Yes.
think that, like, every time you get a little bit comfortable with where the characters are, there's something else. And you're like,
Mhm.
how could there? And of course, I'm trying to find, this is who I am. I do this in documentaries that I watch. I do this in true crime. I do this on podcasts I listen to. I'm always trying to figure shit out before it happens. Like, I want to be the one who's like, knew it, like,
Uh-huh.
called it. Like, that's the
Mm-mm.
kind of person I
Did
be when I
you?
read. No,
Did you see it
no.
coming? No? Okay.
I saw parts of it coming,
Okay.
but I do remember having like the slack jawed, like, oh my gosh, like, what? At one point where I was like, okay. There were several, and I think it's because there's so many facets to the things that he's writing. It's not like saying it's an onion is being a little too gentle. This is not an onion. This is like an outer galaxy planet where there are just so many layers that we haven't quite discovered what to name them yet. That's where I feel it is. And that's
Yeah.
not a bad thing,
Isn't that
right?
amazing though? Like, it's so not one level. Like, to
I
be
worry for
able
his
to
mind.
keep up. Girl, have you seen any interviews with him? Like,
No, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't because I feel like I would have had a I will tell you, I don't often look for or reach out to or like follow a lot of the authors themselves when I'm in a book or in a series or in something like that because I don't want it to affect the way that I read the story because knowing that they write it, I will hear it in their voice, which is weird. And so there's a lot of times that I don't look for those. So I didn't want to have a preconceived notion of what I expected him to be or to have talked about or
mm,
to have written or whatever it is. I didn't
yeah.
want to have anything in my way. I just wanted to read it as the book so I could experience it as it was intended to be read. So no, I've seen nothing of that. I can only imagine that this man
Has seen some shit.
has seen some things. Like, how do you come up with half the crap in this book? And I call it crap because
He,
it's one of those that you're like, oh my God, like, I don't live
yeah,
that life, right?
right.
I
And the
I
funny
live in
thing
the
is,
life of
he doesn't either.
no, I
And that's why it's amazing. That is why it is amazing to hear his interviews. This man is so smart.
oh
And
well,
the
yes,
way he talks, like, he uses big words. He
yeah,
has big brain. Like,
right. He has
and
to.
like he has some dark stuff in his past, and he will
Can't
full, like
imagine.
he is full open book. But to hear him in interview, we love watching interviews. Like, we actually, he did one for his new book. He always does book tours, and he had one in New York, and we weren't going to be able to make it. So we did the online Zoom one and listened, and he'll like read short stories and then he'll answer questions and talk about stuff. Like, the dude is incredible to listen to, even. Like, I feel like now that you've had your experience with the book, like,
I can
now
now
if
get
you
into
go
him.
in, yeah, and if
Like
you
I can
do and
invest in
like
him.
experience him a little bit, it
Yes.
just makes the book, because he doesn't wear his crazy on his sleeve.
No, because he puts it in a book and makes money off of it. Like, how
Yes,
smart? How smart?
right?
Because this, I don't read, and I said it last time, I don't read horror. I don't read thriller. I don't read any of those because for me, a lot of the time, life is messed up enough, right? It's the same reason I don't watch reality television. There's enough going on, drama filled in the rest of the world that I
Yep,
live in, that I don't need
yep.
to see somebody's created version of that. That's just how I am, and it doesn't make me good, better, and different. It's just not the way. Like, I don't spend my time watching that, right?
Right.
I'll watch true crime, which is a
It's not the
documentation
stuff
of
that
something that
you
already
lean
happened that was
into.
terrible. That's the kind of horror that I do. No, like, I'll lean into certain things, but I don't lean in on horror books because I don't lean in on horror books because I visualize so hard that I can give myself my like the nightmares that I don't want to have. So that's why I don't typically do that. I stopped
Yes.
reading who the heck was it? Stephen King. I don't read Stephen King books. I don't read Stephen King books because there's a couple that I read that were too close to home and too close to traumatic things that have happened to people, and I just couldn't do it. So I actually, and Jodi Picoult is not a horror person at all, but she definitely pulls on certain heartstrings, and there are certain themes of hers I cannot read. And that's what I know about myself. So I
Yeah.
don't go into it reading those. I didn't hate this.
Yeah.
I gave it 4 freaking stars, right?
Yeah. I was
I
going to
gave it,
say,
this is
I
my
know you
first book of
didn't.
his. I didn't hate it, but I
Yes.
can't say that I liked it, which is so weird because I didn't hate it. I still think about it often. I love the way he wrote it, which is so weird to say because it gave me such an unsettled feeling when I was reading it. Like I just felt, when you read a really good book and you're like, I cannot wait to pick that back up. Right? I
Hmm.
can't wait. I want to know what's happening next. Like I'm really invested in the characters, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that I was invested in these characters as much as I was like, I don't know where the shit train is taking me. And I just need
Yes.
to see what stop is next because there are so many stops
Yeah.
and it pops
It's
from place to
almost
place.
like,
So
yes.
it's like a teleportation of brain stuff that's happening because you're
Yes.
popping from place to place to place, which it warns you. You know it's going to happen. And it even gives you an example. Jump here,
Hmm.
jump here, jump here, jump here. And you're like, oh, okay. So you get the idea. So it's not it's a comfortable unsettled, which makes it so weird to say.
Yes.
But will I read more of his books? Absolutely. My sister just read one. She's like, I
Yes.
have this for you. I just read it. Do you want it? And I was like, yes. Was it demons or
Yes,
something?
we gave her another one.
She
The,
read it.
the
She's
one
like, do
we
you want
gave
this? And I
her
was like,
was
yes, I do.
Damned. Did she say?
Oh,
Did she
damned.
say
That was it.
anything?
See, I can't remember. She just asked if I wanted it. I didn't ask her.
Okay.
I
So
didn't ask her. And I was like, yes.
that one is that one is very much like a little like a teenager goes to hell, and
Oh, okay.
it's her adventures in hell.
That sounds great. Why did we start with that one? What
Oh,
was
you'll
this?
see. You'll see.
What was this?
You'll see.
Because this
But
has
this
some
one,
serious themes.
yes.
Some serious
Yes.
themes.
Yes. And that's why we
And
love it. It's just so different, but it's so well written. I will tell you, timeline is kind of fuzzy, so don't quote me, but from what I understand, this was supposed to be one of his first.
okay,
But the publisher had no idea how to classify it.
I
They
can't
were not
imagine why.
sure. They were not sure where to put it on the shelves. So they were like, maybe not. And he also had Fight Club at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, yeah, maybe we start with this one. And there were
It says,
variations of that too. So then this one, after he got notoriety and did this, got some credibility, then they were able to publish this one. And I will tell you that even this published version was not his original intent. The original intent was this one, and it is written like a tabloid magazine where you're reading an article in a magazine and then
yeah,
it's like continued on page 97 and then you like skip back. Like it's actually like that. And
like a choose your own
people,
adventure, except it's telling you what to do.
yeah, and it tells you where to go to keep reading. And some people have said that they have read this cover to
Mm-hmm.
cover. I have not, so I have no idea what that experience is like
Right?
because this one is. So that's why we also have this one
I feel like that
because
would be
this
more
was his
stressful,
original intent. That's what I
right?
was thinking.
I feel like it's more so I love to read a book from cover to cover. I loved the choose your own adventure, right? But definitely with a choose your own adventure, you're always moving forward. At least that's how it
Yeah,
feels, right?
yeah,
You're always moving forward in a choose your own adventure, which is great because I like the idea of starting at one and being able to track my progress. But
yes,
if I'm reading it that way, how am I tracking my progress? How are they tracking my progress? Just from a trying to put some concrete understanding around it. One. Two, I love the idea given who she is and what she does, right? Like our
right. Like
main
it
character.
might
Um, it
it
makes
might make more
sense,
sense to read that
right?
way too. Like
Instead
I'm
of saying
like,
jump, jump, we're
oh,
actually jumping back and forth. It does
yes.
say in the front of this one, it says that he had Fight Club, Survivor, and Choke all out before this one.
Okay, okay,
So
yeah,
at least it looked that way. But,
yeah. So he built some credibility before for this one. Yeah, they just weren't sure where to put him,
right?
what
And I
genre
will,
he filled. Because even calling it horror, I don't know that it's horror that I would consider horror.
um,
Like when I think of horror, I think of like,
death and dismemberment, because that's what I think of.
Yeah, or like the that's not what I don't know what I'm thinking of. The Michael Myers and
Yeah.
the
Wasn't there a Freddy?
Freddy Krueger. Yes, I
Freddy
was like
Krueger. I was like,
Freddy,
there's
but
a
I was
Freddy.
picturing Mike Myers, so I was
Oh, I
like,
was like,
this is
no, I
not
was like, there's a
computing.
Freddy.
There is a
I saw
Freddy.
a Freddy Krueger and was like, why are you confused?
Yes,
No,
because
that
I
is
was
horror.
picturing, yes. See, that's what I would consider horror. Like, this doesn't feel like slasher horror.
No, but I mean, but you start
Is it
literally
creepy? Yes.
paid 100%. But it's also, it is a mind fuck that doesn't fuck you up, if that makes sense,
Yes.
right? There are certain things that like leave you shell shocked when you read them in something that's horror, in something that's thriller, that will definitely make you be like, oh, like I'm gonna need a break.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't roll from one checkbook to the next. Not doing that. I'm gonna need some space in between, but I'm definitely gonna go back.
Yeah.
Right? I'm definitely
Like
gonna go
just to
back.
see what else
No,
is there. Yeah.
but I mean, we're looking at page one, chapter one, page one. Let's see, one, two, three, four, five. The sixth, seventh sentence is not a giveaway, but it does say nobody's all the way dead yet, but let's just say the clock is ticking. That's sentence seven of the
Hmm.
story. So you are
Yes.
starting out with zero expectation of this going slow.
Yes.
And I feel like while it doesn't feel rushed, everything happens quickly. And I
Yeah.
don't know if it's
We're
because
not lingering.
no, but I don't
Mm-mm.
know if it's because I consumed it quickly because I had to be like, what is going to happen, or
Yes.
why, like, where are we getting all of these things? And I think you kind of have to read it that way, otherwise you
You
start
do.
to lose the thread
Yeah.
on
Yeah. That makes
where
sense.
you are. And I feel like that's the way
Hmm.
he wrote it, and it feels like so. Guts felt very similar, and when I say felt similar, the style was similar. The story is
Hmm.
completely different, right?
Yes.
Completely different. They are not the same themes. They are not the same anything. But he definitely has, or seems to have, from the perspective of studying him as a person, and from my very limited knowledge, you will be able to tell me more. It seems like he's not there necessarily for shock and awe. He's
Hmm.
there to create the atmosphere that you want to have yourself pulled through the rest of the story. Because this is not
Yes.
an easy walk in the park. This is work.
No. Right. But it's also not like a slog.
No,
You
no.
know, when you
I
think of like
felt,
work reading.
yeah, I felt, it didn't feel like one of the other books I'm reading right now feels like work, right? It feels like work that I have to do in the morning where I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to read a couple pages, I'm going to learn something, right? This felt like I had accomplished something when I had read it.
Yes.
And it didn't,
Yes.
like I said, it didn't change my life. It didn't change the way I think about things. I mean, it might have changed the way I think about some things. Um, but
But it sticks
it,
with you.
it does.
It's just so different.
And but I felt like I felt pretty proud about checking that one off my list and being like, I did it. And I don't know if it's because I respect you and Greg so much and like all the things that you talk about and the things that you like and the fact that you had recommended it. I think it was a little bit of that, but I also think it was because this was an effort and not one that I felt like I wanted to, like, there's a difference in
Because
feeling. It's not a,
it's not your genre at all.
no, but it's also not a book that I would have considered DNFing. Like, there was never a time where I was like, I'm putting this down. I don't want to finish it. And there are
Right.
times where I've been like, I just don't want to pick it back up again. And I haven't, right? But that was not this book, which I was surprised
Yeah.
about because
Yeah.
the content within is, as you said, not my typical
It is
choice.
not typical, but I think that's what makes his voice so unique. They are very unique. And in listening to interviews with him along the way, he writes about victims overcoming their
Yeah.
situation. So not falling victim, but like them taking control. So it's not a shock and awe. It's not a pity me story. It's
Mm-mm.
not, it's just, it's almost very empowering of a story,
You
but also
don't feel
very
bad,
human. Like
right?
it's very human because not, I feel like a lot of times when we see people overcoming, it's almost like they're superhuman. And you're like, how would a regular person handle this? Like, how would a normal person, like, what would a normal person say in limited vocabulary? Like, there would probably be a lot of profanity if I were, like, I'm not going to come up with eloquent words and, like, you
Right.
know? And so I feel like maybe like a hero story for normal people.
Possibly, but I also think that I didn't ever feel Like there were times for the characters I felt like that, like something would happen and you'd be like that's really shitty. Like
Yeah.
they should never have done that to you. They should, like, how dare
Yes.
they, like those, like you felt that righteousness for them where you wanted to be like, this should not have happened to you. They should have been
Yes.
better people. They should have done better things. They should have seen better, like all of that kind of stuff. But you don't feel bad for the person in a
No.
pity kind of, you don't pity
No.
anybody in the story.
No.
And it's not because you dislike them.
No.
You see their strength for what it is
Yep.
and for what they're doing and for
Mhm.
how they're working through it. But also they don't have that sense of self-pity.
No,
And
there's no
they,
self-pity. Yeah.
no, no, not at
Yeah.
all.
Very much. And in other interviews, like we've watched a lot of interviews because he's just so fascinating. Um, he always does like Q&As and stuff. And on several occasions, people have got up and they're like, first of all, like that was fucked up in the best possible way. Like your writing is so, like those literal words, your
That's what I'm
writing is so
saying.
fucked up. And like to see his expression, I don't think I don't think he thinks that's a compliment the way that people mean it to be.
Right. Right.
Because he's like, I don't write fucked up things. Like, I just write, to tell a story, to do this. Like, I'm not here for shock and awe. I'm not here
Right.
to, like, you know. So it's very interesting.
I can see where that would not be a compliment to him. For somebody
Yes.
to be like, I can't believe you wrote something like so insane, blah, blah, blah. I don't think the insanity is what drives them. I think if
Mm-mm.
someone were to say something along the lines of, I can't believe that you have so adequately pulled on so many real emotions that come through healing and through trauma and through survivorship and through all of these things that he talks about, especially in this book. I don't know about the other ones, but in this book especially, I think those would be more prominent themes.
Yeah.
And this is, no, don't get me wrong, this is not
No.
a feel good story. This is not a feel good story, and it's not supposed to be.
No.
But at the end, you do end up feeling a sense of power within the characters
Hmm.
that
Yes.
may have been there the whole time, right? And some of it comes off
Right.
as nonchalance, some of it comes off as an ego, some of it comes off as, several different things, which it's supposed to, because those are all facets of the healing process through which they're going, through
Yeah.
in this story. But it's done under such interesting circumstances
Hmm.
that are not things that we would experience
Yeah.
in a typical lifestyle, right?
But it feels very human. Like it doesn't feel so far-fetched that it's like a fantasy read,
No, but
but
it's definitely
also
fiction,
not
but it's
not
not.
typical, you know, weirdness. But
No, but
yeah,
you can see it in LA. You can see it in, somewhere where there's money and time and opportunity and
right.
access. Like it's not so far outside the realm of possible that you
Mm-mm.
can say, "Oh, this doesn't happen," because there are lives I do not live and I do not wish to
Right,
live.
right,
But that doesn't mean that other people have not. And that I
right.
think is where it gets you, where you're like, I
Yeah,
know it's fiction, but is it fiction?
but like it could
Who
be.
did this? Like, where did you get this?
Yeah, yeah. Where did you
And I,
come up with this?
I think the other piece of it, and I think I saw it in Guts, I think I saw it in here, is that there aren't a lot of original thoughts in the world anymore. There just
Hmm.
aren't, right? Like
Yep.
we've all had every bright, great idea that we've had has probably stemmed from an experience or something else that we have had done or seen. Um, and I've not seen something like this before,
Right.
right? And so I think the
Yeah.
way he posits the points that he's making are unique. And I don't know if that's why people are like, oh, that's why it's so messed up. But I think it's just because it's unlike anything else.
Hmm.
And so it's a flavor of originality that we don't typically see at
Yeah.
all anymore. Because
Yeah.
when was the last time that you were like, oh, that's new? Like,
No.
right? Like, I'm pretty sure the
No.
last new thing we had was like a mac and cheese colored crayon. So, like, other than that, I don't, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
things just seem to build off of others, which they're supposed to. But no one is really recreating or creating something like the wheel, right? We don't, the
Right.
wheel, sliced bread, all of those things that we continue
Because
to
why?
talk about
Hmm.
because we're all just regenerating things in ways that are different, but not
Yes.
necessarily unique. And so,
Yeah.
but I think that his approach And I look forward, and I'm going to say this and put it on the record, I look forward to seeing if the rest of his books or other books of his give me that same feeling. Or if it was unique to this one, which I don't think it is.
Yes. It's not. So his topics are very unique in a way that he brings in different plot points, different characters, different, I want to say visions, but like, different stories, like completely different. Um, a lot of darker topics, but
Yes.
also not, I want to say like not in a horrific way, not in a shock and awe and I'm just going to mess up your day kind of thing, but kind of
Right.
like and then to see him talk, you're like, oh, you hide your crazy really well.
Which is also concerning. Not for him in general, but just as a note, it gives, oh God, it gives poise, it gives validity, it gives whatever it is, acceptance to the fact that some of these things could be real
Well,
because you
and
don't
that's
know
the
what's on the
thing.
inside of everybody else.
You don't know. I think he has said that these are not things that like he has had to reassure people that some of these things like are truly made up. Like there's no there's no fact about it. There's no, like truly made up. And I mean that kind of looks a little crazy, but also like how amazing is it that maybe you aren't every thought that you have? Like maybe you can come up with these stories and not have them be anything more or mean anything more than a story you have written.
Right? I'm going to go a step further there and even say that that is a gift, a an attribute, a skill that we lose as we grow, right? Because there's no place typically as a child when you are imagining, when you are playing, when you are whatevering, that somebody looks at you and goes, "Well, that's not real. You can't do that," because they know you're playing. Right? They know you're
Yeah.
playing. They know you're pretending. They know all of these things. But then we gradually, as expectation tends to creep upon us,
Yep.
and actualization and realization of ourselves, and a little bit of that sentience of being comes in, we lose that and the opportunity to imagine like that. And so to have
Right.
somebody who still has, because I can tell you I don't do that. I have several other creative outlets that I utilize, but it's not that, right? And that's not a thing that I would
Yeah.
ever claim to have, or look to have, because it's not my skill. But for someone to have retained that skill, maybe that's why it's so unique. It's because it
Yeah.
does whisper to that little piece
Yeah.
of our way behind, our way beyond,
Yeah.
the before times, when we were able to simply imagine and play, and then when we were done playing, we were just done playing.
Yeah. And that's it. It's imagination and it's a story that someone concocted and that's it. Like it exists on its own and has no bearing. And I think that is truly what inspires us, I'll say us, about his writing because it's just so different and
Yeah.
it's well written so you can tell he cares and like yeah, we're huge fans.
I mean, even my copy of the book just felt like, and I'm a sucker for certain things when it comes to printing, like
Yep.
font size and, font type, and like just the book itself felt good to read, where it was
Hmm.
like even the spacing of how he was expressing things, and like the double spacing between certain portions to delineate a break or whatever, like that made the read so much more immersive because I
Hmm.
didn't have to do the work of like pacing. I felt like a lot of the book was definitely paced
Yeah.
the
I
way
would agree.
he wanted it
He
paced.
wanted you. Yep.
He read it as if he were telling it to you versus you reading
Yes.
it. And I think that's
Yes.
different because I think the way I write is the way I speak, right? And I'm not a
Right.
writer. But the fact that I was able to read this and know exactly how it would have sounded, I heard a lot more of it than I thought I would.
Nice.
And so I
Okay.
almost felt like I was watching a lot of it versus
Yes.
reading it.
I felt like that too.
Yeah.
I definitely felt like that.
Yeah. And when
Like
you get
just
into her
watching it
head,
happen.
right in her head with her experience with her parents, right? Some of the conversations with her parents, you could see the difference between like, oh, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here, right? Like this is what I'm
Yes.
saying out loud, this is what I'm thinking inside, this is what I'm saying out loud, this is what I'm thinking inside. When she'd be like, give me patience, give me this, give me that. You could feel why she's pulling on
Yeah.
those things and how
There's
those
so much
do,
feeling.
yeah, and how those do correlate to things that we have when we are in a situation that doesn't feel great or that we want to be out of. And we're like, all right, give me a little bit of understanding, give me a little bit of whatever. Like, it feels relatable in
The
not the
human
most fun way.
experience,
Yes.
right?
So I I'm at a loss, kind of. I appreciate the recommendation. Like I said, 4-star book. I'm really good at giving threes. I'm really good at giving 3 point somethings, right? And this was definitely, I gave this a 4. And
Yeah.
so that has to mean something. And I haven't
And
gone
I
back and fixed it,
saw
and I
it
don't think I
with
need
no
to.
context. Yeah, I
Nothing.
was gonna say, I saw it with no context and I was like, oh, she finished it. And she gave it 4 stars.
Did you tell him?
I can't wait to talk to her about it, but we have to do it on camera.
Right?
So I'm very glad that you enjoyed it. And
I
I'm
did.
very glad that you are going to be continuing. You know, it's like a here and there kind of
Yeah.
thing because they
Yeah.
are all like one off, very different. The only one I would say is not hugely liked is Pygmy. It was
Okay.
written in a way that is very hard to read.
Okay.
I believe he made up his own language
Oh. Oh.
in some of it.
Look at me. I'm like, wait, what? Okay.
So, so yeah, I think there's a consensus in the reviews of like, maybe avoid that one.
Okay.
You're not, you're not missing anything if you circle around and get some of the other ones.
I have
But
several
I'm
on my
very
shelf that are
excited.
not that one. So,
I was going to say, I
and
think we gave you a stack and said,
you did.
start with this one.
You did. So now I have to go
And
see
then,
actually which one I'm going to weave in, right? It
yeah,
might be one that I weave in every, 1 quarter and see where I
yeah,
get to and which ones I like. So I'll have to take a look and see. I'll put it up on whatever platform
yes,
it is. I'll put it up when I decide which one I'm going to read next.
more conversations to come on those. But yes, I
Right?
love introducing people to new authors, which is exactly why we thought we should do author studies. We love author study episodes
We
because
do.
we've now opened the door. Like maybe you've never heard of Chuck Palahniuk, and maybe now you're like, oh, hey, we've just opened a whole door.
And I will tell you, if I can get through this book, given my typical reads, which are fiction, fantasy, romance, romantasy,
Historical
historical
fiction.
fiction, right? If those are my typical, and this one I am willing to add to the gamut of things that I'm reading,
And
it's
keep
something that,
going with
right? And
him,
to keep to it,
might
yes.
I add.
There are certain people that I know I will not recommend this book to. It's just not their
No.
thing, right? Even if, and I may make that, you know what I mean? Like, there are certain people where I'm like, yeah, this is probably not one you're going to enjoy, right? Happy to have
Yeah.
you read it, happy to share it with you, but I will tell you right now, it's not simple. And I don't want to say it's
Right.
not easy. I don't want to say it's hard. It's just not simple. And
Yeah.
so if you're looking for a simple, that ain't it.
That ain't it.
That ain't it. So definitely one. I appreciate the expansion of my typical, of my normal.
I'm going to use my word. It's a submersive experience.
That it is. We haven't used that one in a while.
I haven't.
We
I
haven't.
keep forgetting, but I'm going to try and weave it in.
I'm so glad you brought it
Submersive.
back, right? But I think that maybe adding a couple other author studies, right? And I don't think it necessarily needs to be our typical. And so if somebody has like a recommendation where you're like, hey, I absolutely love this author. I know that you just the cast family, mother,
Yes.
daughter. I just actually
Yes.
purchased The Empress that you talked about a couple episodes ago. And so I did purchase that one. It's on my list and would love to do something, on. So maybe that's an author that we should study at
Yes.
some point. Maybe
That'll be a
there are
good
several
one.
others. Would love to do
Yeah.
some that are not necessarily unknown, but some that are a little bit outside what we typically do.
And maybe, and I think it's true because I avoid hyped books. So I don't always love talking about the authors that are being talked about. I think there's
Right.
so many other really cool things out there that maybe aren't getting their time, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And I
yeah.
think that also
Hope to.
opens us into ARC books, right? I think there are
Yes.
several things that like I know that I have a friend who's currently working on a book and she's, planning to send it to us, to let us give it a read and that sort of thing, which may be, it may be more in the romantasy space, but it's definitely like a different author, one that's not super well known and talked about and that sort of thing, but would love to read and to
Yeah.
get to know more of those things too. So any of those
Yeah.
recommendations are always big for me.
We love that. Yeah. Let us know who you're reading, who you're loving that
Hmm.
maybe aren't getting talked about a lot because
Right?
we love that.
Who needs more attention?
Who
Everybody
needs?
needs more attention.
Who
Who
needs?
who needs
Who
more
needs our
attention? Tell us,
attention?
right?
Yes.
Tell us who to talk about. Happy to add that on, right? And just I'm
Yes.
always willing to add. I think that's part of the reason I love going to the bargain book section or a book outlet
I'm
online of
always in
some
a
sort,
used bookstore, and
right?
you never know what you're going to come
No,
across on the shelf. So if I know authors that I'm looking for, or like, hey, someone recommended this,
yeah.
it's so weird because they'll just magically show up.
All of a sudden they're
And
there.
you're
I
like,
also
oh, I
love
wouldn't have seen that.
Right. I also love going into a bookshop that has recommendations from the
The
employees.
staff,
Or where it's
yes,
like, if you loved this, here's a couple
yes,
others that you might like that are not super well known authors. Give me that. Give me that.
yes,
Because
yes.
I don't know. I just feel like it's cool to have somebody else's blood, sweat, and tears in my hand in a way that they have created something cool.
And something that they care enough about, because I think that's why we're doing what we're doing, because we care enough about these books that we talk about to be
Yeah.
like, holy crap, you have to read this.
Yes.
Like, if this is not on your radar, it needs to be. And I
Yeah.
think that's great because both of us can cover more ground that way.
We definitely can. We can. I like that there are certain things that we definitely read together, like we read similarly. I know that you and I have talked about potentially reading Fourth Wing because neither of us has read it yet. But that's a thing that we have not done yet. I have it. It's sitting there, and I know the next one has come out, so I haven't read any of them. But it's a thing that's on the list. But I also know that there's other pieces that we read that are wildly different,
Yes.
and so I think that's very cool. And so I think we care enough about the fact that there are so many books to read. We also care enough about the people who are here with us and that we can say, hey, here are the things that we really think are great and here are the things that you shouldn't waste your time on.
Yeah. And I think that's the beautiful thing too, just to kind of circle back to what you were saying. There are some people that I would recommend these books to.
Yeah.
And then there are some people I'm like, no offense, but you're not going to enjoy this.
It
You're
ain't
just
you.
not. So
Yeah.
don't worry about it. So
Yeah.
I would love to know because I know this is not everybody's cup of tea, but I would love to know if you've read any Palahniuk. If so, which ones? This might be a Facebook group conversation because I feel like this is probably going to get in depth. So
Yeah. I was going to say,
join us
this is
over
more than
there.
a 2 sentence thing.
Yeah, we need a little more characters.
Yeah. A couple more of those. Less
A little
emojis,
more
more words.
characters for this character.
Yes.
Yes. So come have the conversations with us.
Perfect. Look forward to seeing you on next week's episode with us and hopefully more author studies to come. So like we said, if you have a recommendation, let us know. But we will see you on all the socials. You can find all of the links down below. And don't forget to give the video a like. It does help us out as things go by. And if there's a video that you missed, it will probably pop up right after this if you've already subscribed. And if not, you can always head over to the channel and pick up where you left off.
We love to see you.
And we'll see you again real soon. It was great to have you join us for today's chat. If you'd like to continue the conversation, provide a recommendation, or simply say hi, pop over to Instagram at wine.read.wine. Also, if you're the review type person, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us an honest review on your favorite podcast player. Or leave us a comment on our YouTube channel. We'll see you on the next episode. Happy reading!